podcasting for over 7 years, and she's going to be talking about the do's and don'ts when you're interviewing people. She is a fearless communicator who helps leaders break through self-doubt and fear. And as the CEO of Sparks of Fire International, she hosts multiple podcasts, and her signature podcast is called The Shay Sparks Show. So please help me give a big warm welcome to Shay Sparks.
Thank you. Who is fired up? How many of you timers? First, all right. Newbies, yes. All right. New timer, all right.
Podfest virgin.
What'd you say?
Podfest virgin.
All right. Yes. And how many of you have an interview show? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm going to share the art of the interview because it really is about creating a piece of art. Every episode that you do is a masterpiece. Whether you want to look at it or not, but that's really what you're doing. It's your voice, your communication, the way that you create your show is a piece of art. I'm going to share with you the do's and don'ts about how the interview. I'm also going to share how to quickly build rapport with your guests, because sometimes we don't do those pre-interviews. We just jump in and ask questions. And I'm going to give you the 3 tough assets of podcasting. So you might be thinking, well, who is this person? Well, I am a coach, a speaker, a multi-time author. I am a community builder. I love to take sunrise pictures, and I love anything glitter. Anybody else love anything glitter? All right, thank you, my glitter girls, yes. And of course, whoever, right? And I am also, fun fact, a former hairstylist. So I know how to ask questions very quickly and get to the heart of what they really want, right? So that is really what rapport is. And I'm going to get to that in a moment because I forgot about this. My podcasting journey started off with the power of investing in people. I joined forces with some friends of mine and we created Underwired. We did that for a few months. It was picked up by an online network where they said, hey, we need a host for another show called Real Talk. That began my another career, another show. And the power of investing in people has now shifted into the Shay Sparks Show, investing in people. And what does that look like for my guest? And one of those things I've learned, not just being a hairstylist, but all the hundreds and thousands of people I've talked to, is how to build rapport quickly. And what do you think the first thing you can do to build rapport? Smile! And I know there's some people that don't like to smile. They just sit there with a cold face, right? But smiling is what brings people joy. Smiling is contagious. Another thing you can do is have open body language. How many of you record over video? Yeah, most of us, right? And so you are seeing the other person. Now your arms are relaxed, your shoulders are open. Now here's a fun fact. How many of you actually look at the camera? Or do you look at the screen? Right? So it's important to make sure that even if you're looking at the screen, that you also check in to look at the camera, especially when they're talking, because they're looking at the screen, looking at you. So it's like this weird dichotomy that's different than in person. But the best thing about it is it really helps them be comfortable and go, yeah, I like this person. I trust this person. I'm going to share all my secrets, right? So that may be your show, and it may not be your show. Which brings me to setting the tone. How do you set the tone of your interview? Well, you kind of do that in the building the rapport process. If you do a pre-interview, how many do pre-interviews before they do a yes? Right, some of you, yes. And some of you might use a tool where they connect you with an interview, a guest, and you don't have time to do that. I don't know about you, but I've gotten to the point where I can look at their bio, create some conversation, and really be kind of in the back of my head of really what I want to talk about. And I can also get to the point, I'm also to the point where I look at life like there are conversations like a spelling test or writing a research paper. Does anybody write a research paper when they were younger and the teacher wrote a big circle around their spelling words that were wrong? Yeah, that's how the conversation shows up in my head. Like all of a sudden they'll say a keyword that pertains to my topic, like leadership, connection, communication. Because I start every podcast episode with, What does investing in people mean to you? And I say to my guests as we're setting this tone and building the rapport session, is I'm going to ask you that question. I trust and know you're going to say something brilliant, and then we're going to go from there. In the beginning days, I had a list of questions that I bombarded, and it sounded like a machine gun going off. And it was like, wow, what did this person even talk about? Because I was so focused on what I wanted to say. But part of the setting the tone is setting the time limit, saying, hey, I only have 30 minutes, but I really want to connect with you, so let's stay connected. Or I have an hour, my interview's only 30 minutes, so we have time to chat afterwards if you want. But it's important to set that tone. So before you even set that tone, and you're thinking about creating your show, or thinking about your show flow, as I like to call it, think about the hero's journey. Anybody see Star Wars?
Yes.
Is Star Wars fans? Great. Anybody see Mandalorian, actually? Yeah, there we go. So he's the hero, right? Well, in your podcast episode, what's really great is you get a choice. You get to choose how you can design your show. What I have found in my own show and other researching other shows is that when you make your guest the hero, you're providing them the platform to really shine, rather than you shine. Now, don't get me wrong, you can shine. I want you to share your wisdom. In fact, we're going to talk about that later. Sharing your wisdom, how good that is for your show, for your brand, for your voice, right? Sharing your legacy. But right now, in this hero's journey, I want you to think about how you are talking less and listening more. So one of the things about that talking less is when you ask, so we're going to get to the 5 do's and don'ts. When you start off, think about this. Do not ask one-word answer questions. Yes, no. Do you drink coffee? Okay, so the next thing, unless you have a follow-up. Oh, what is your favorite, beverage? What is your go-to drink? Something like that. Now, here's another tip from a coach perspective. If you really want to know the why behind someone's answer, craft it in a different way other than asking why. Instead of saying, why did you do that? Say something like, oh, I'm really curious, what prompted you to make that decision? Because when you say the word why, a lot of times it puts the guest's guards up and they get offended and they're like, oh, they have to go on the defense then, and they don't want to share their wisdom. And then you just made them not the hero of your episode, right? So think about that when you're asking those really amazing questions. And I know each of you are. And we just talked about bombarding, right? So I used to, so let me take you back to my podcast journey in 2018. I'm literally recording in a closet, and I had a list of all of the 10 questions that I wanted, and I would ask the question, and then they would answer, and I would say, great, and here's my next question, and then back and forth, and it was great and awesome, and that was about the extent of what I did the first season of my podcast. Because why? I knew. So remember, we asked about who was new. Well, for those who are not new, would you agree with me by shaking your heads that interviewing is a practice? This is an art form, like martial arts, like dance, painting, whatever art you have, right? It is a practice. So don't bombard them. Another thing that I found myself doing is not just bombarding them with question after question and not me engaging in their answer. I would also be like, give them 4 questions in a question. So tell me about this and that and this thing and how it felt all at the same time. And it's like, whoa. By the time they've answered 1, they've forgotten the other 3. And to be honest, so did I. Don't overtalk them. Now, I am so guilty of that. Remember I said about the closet in 2018? Well, I also did it on speakerphone, so I was not using video. I wasn't seeing them. I wasn't seeing their body language. And what ended up happening, I am not even kidding. In fact, I just talked to him the other day, so it's so funny that this is part of my speech today, because he's so amazing and so intelligent that he was giving such great long answers, and then he would pause. And I jumped in, like, oh my God, I'm so excited to do my next question. And then he started talking at the same time I started talking because I thought in my head, because I was only listening, right? Because I didn't have the video, I didn't see the body language, that he paused because he was done. No, he paused because he was taking a breath because he just had a long answer, right? And what's so great is that when I had to go back and edit it, and that's another thing I highly recommend, bonus tip, is edit your own show for a while, those newbies, so you hear the things that you're doing, just like that, if you're over-talking your guest. And then don't be rude when you need to interrupt them. So how crazy would it be if you're in video, and all of a sudden they're talking, and they're going a little long, they're a little bit long-winded. You're looking at your watch, it's over time. Would it be rude if you put your hands over your ears and like, yeah. So how can you interrupt them with kindness, right? So again, we're doing it over video these days, most of us, right? So you could like raise a hand up. You could even just kind of, you could say, excuse me, I absolutely love what you're talking about. I can't wait to have you back on the show. Now, I will say, do not say that disingenuously unless you want them back on your show. I actually had that happen to me. And so this man was talking about the injury he had with his knee and the surgery and all the details and the anesthesia and the surgeon and da 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 da. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to move on to the next question. We have a time limit. And I was like, I really want to have you back on. I want to talk to more, but there's so much more I want to get to. And he's like, Raylan, come back on. And I got an email every single week after that to make sure he got back on. So make sure that you're not saying that unless you really need that. And this part, remember how I said I didn't get the pause? So there's a thing called a thought pause. When people are talking, sometimes they have to talk slower because they have to have time to think. Introverts will pause before they answer. I don't know about you, I am not an introvert. As an extrovert, I talk and then I think. In fact, I will say many times, oh wow, where I opened my mouth and words fell out, and then I read the thought bubble. And went, oh, that's what I said. I didn't even realize it. Okay, yeah, so if you can take a moment and give their time. And a wise man once told me two things. One, you're giving them permission to continue thinking. And you can say something like, that's really something to think about, isn't it? And that gives them permission even more to then maybe they wandered off in their head. It brings them back in, right? But you're creating this episode for them as for you, right? You're creating this platform to not just highlight them as the hero, but you're highlighting your skills of care. Every single person that you're interviewing, I guarantee you by the end of the interview, you're going to care about them. Here I didn't say like them, but you're going to care, and you might care to never have them on your show again, right? But you're going to care about them. And that's why it's so important to really let the conversation flow in an organic way. So when those thought bubbles or those red circles around their keyword show up, you can go, oh, tell me more. You just said the word connection. You just told me the word empowered. Tell me more about what empowerment means to you, right? Whatever it is along with your show. Does anyone want to give me an example of what their show is, and I can kind of tell you what a good keyword would be that you want to look for? Yeah.
I have a podcast with my daughter.
Yes.
I have a podcast with my daughter. It's called Daddy Daughter Bookworms. She's 10, and we review kids' books.
Awesome. So are you talking with her about it?
Yeah, it's a scripted thing where I'll give her questions. She answers them about the book, whether she likes it. she doesn't like it. We also do questions, kind of hard-hitting questions like, how do you feel about that? It started out light and then it turned into, some tough questions, and some of the books are really talking about things that are, thank you for the 50 second.
Yeah. Do you ever go even, like, not just deep, but do you go off script?
All the time. I do it on purpose. And she's amazing because she can, because she's a YouTube, she's 10 and she's a YouTube kid, so she knows how to set things up. She's a better podcaster than I am. By far.
I love it.
And she, okay, Dad, we gotta wrap it up, like kind of thing. Her father doesn't know a mic that doesn't want to be spoken to.
I love it.
As you can see.
Well, and I love the fact that you are creating rapport with her, right? And creating that relationship that's just a bond that is most parents don't get. In fact, I'm gonna just take a pause here and talk to you about how your podcast is your legacy.
Yep.
And literally what you're doing is creating a legacy with her, right? So I highly recommend, another bonus tip, if you have loved ones in your life and you're a podcaster, please do it for me, because I didn't get the chance to do it. My parents, I lost them before I started podcasting. Interview them. Ask those questions you've always wanted to know. Even if it's about you as a kid, right? Get to the thing that you really wanted to know, like, where did you meet your parents? I didn't know that my dad was drafted to Korea during the Vietnam War until 6 months before he passed away. Had I known that I was going to start a podcast later that year, I would have sat down and recorded that whole entire conversation and asked him a million more questions. I didn't. I missed that opportunity. So I love that you're building this legacy with your daughter, and so this is part of what the podcast journey is about, and what a perfect person to practice your interview skills on, right, is your own family. And the great thing also about editing is you can edit out stuff you don't want, right? And interviewing your family, it doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to put it up on your show. This can just be for you. Because, like I said, I wish I had this. I wish I had my parents' voice now. I don't have that. And then the crazy thing was 2 years after I lost my dad, I lost my brother. And that never even, like, as I was losing them and had my podcast, it never crossed my mind to interview them until after I lost them. Dang, there was a missed opportunity, right? So your voice is your legacy. Your podcast is your legacy, which kind of brings me to this next thing. So when you think about how you craft this piece, this masterpiece that you are creating with another person, it might not be a bad idea to think about your audience and including them in the conversation. Now, is there any football fans in the room? Awesome. So I am a Chiefs fan, and you might have heard of them. Travis Kelsey and Jason Kelsey have a new Heights Show podcast, right? And one of the things that they do really well that I love engaged in them, now whether they talk about something I'm interested in or not is another thing, but what I love is listening to them from the standpoint is what is it that they're getting right? And they have identified their audience as 92 percenters. Anyone go to the keynote with John Lee Dumas this morning? Yeah, he has E on Fire, Entrepreneurs on Fire. He calls his audience Fire Nation. He engages in the audience because he's having the conversation not just with the audience, or not just with his guests, when he has guests, but also with the audience. What I decided to do is go a different route. I add who my audience is. I actually describe who my audience is. So for an example, I might be talking to a military leader or a business leader, and I might say, so take me back to when you were making the decision to transition out of being an employee and starting your business. What advice would you give to someone who is an employee going to an entrepreneur, because most of my audience is employees, entrepreneurs, or military to civilian life. So tell me more about that transition time of your life. Now, what just happened? If my audience is listening and they're like, oh my gosh, she's talking directly to me, they're going to want to listen more. Because then why? I'm providing value to them. But also, if they're like, well, that doesn't really pertain to me, so but I really like the show, I'm going to keep listening because I might learn a thing or two about a thing or two, right? And I feel like that's really what we're doing as podcasters. When we learn something, it's knowledge. It's not until we share it that it becomes wisdom. You're providing the platform for your guests to share their wisdom. You're providing the platform for you to share your wisdom. Now again, you can even, if you want to have a whole solo episode, this is your show, you get to create it. You can do sharing your wisdoms. You can even have a commentary. We talk about setting a tone, right? Setting the tone in the beginning. I used to tell my guests, I tried Thing for a season, just try it out. I'm like, hey, here's the thing. We're gonna have a great conversation. I want to make sure this aligns with who you are and what you're doing. Again, what did I do? I set the tone. If they said that doesn't work for me, I mean, great, I won't do it. Well, I won't do it at the end of your show, no big deal. I said, here's the thing, I'm trying something new. Because I'm a coach, I really want to have this coaching segment at the end. And I created the segment at the end of my podcast episode that's called Don't Be a Dick. And it's an acronym that stands for disrespectful, or dishonest, inconsiderate, conniving, and know-it-all. So I'm going to take something absolutely fantastic about what you said and apply it to how we are those things to ourselves. Are you okay with that? Not one person said no, right? Because they're like, oh, I love that concept. I'm totally going to share that. Why? Because it's so different. And you involve them even more because you're now talking about them after your actual show. So include your audience. Now, you've had a great show, you've built rapport, you're like, man, this person's amazing, and even better, they're smiling, so they think I'm amazing. So how can I, now I hit stop recording, now I suggest that you don't exit the meeting. I suggest that now's the time for feedback. How was it for you? Did you enjoy the conversation? Because guess what? They may say, no, I didn't, and I need this part cut out. I really overspoke, I overshared. I had a woman tell me one time, she said, I shared a story that I think is going to be really offensive, and I didn't even know it until just now. Can we cut that out? Yes, absolutely, that's what editing's for. No problem. I'll go back and listen to it and time mark it and we'll cut it out, no big deal. And she's like, oh, thank you, that's what I needed. Had I not set up that feedback time, she might have heard it ever and then been too mad at herself to share it. Instead, the opposite happened. She was like, oh my gosh, this was such a great episode. I love it. She honored me, my request, and did it, and took care of it. And here's the other thing that I love to do. I'm like, oh, are we following each other on social? Oh, let's do that right now. Because I'm going to tag you in all of the social media posts that I do for this episode. Would you be willing to share too? And you know what they say? Yes. So when you're building that rapport, mirroring their energy, you're building that trust, they're liking you. What are they going to do? Of course they want to stay connected, right? Of course they want to continue seeing what you're doing. Of course they want to share their episode, because why? You made them the hero. So they're like, wow, this person's amazing. And then guess what else? They're going to connect you with other guests. You might connect you with other people that you could, who knows the possibility of what could happen with your show. That's the great thing about podcasting. So I'm going to shift gears for a minute. So what do you think your top 3 podcasting assets are? Give me a hand, anyone. Is it your microphone?
My email list.
Your email list, awesome.
Myself.
Yes. Yourself, awesome. Yes.
My team.
Your team, I love that. Great answers. Could be your microphone, could be your team, could be your email list, could be yourself, could be your laptop, could be your camera. Or what?
Network.
Network? Network. Yeah. I like to say it's your voice, it's your ears, and it's your eyes. I was like, wait, there's a third one. Because it goes back to that interview, right? Your voice is your biggest asset. Your ears, so you can actually hear what they're saying, but also when we hear somebody, we are hearing what they're not saying. And when you ask someone a question that they would never expect because you're seeing their eye, you're looking at them, you're reading their body language. I'll never forget, I had an interview with a man who was injured in a war, came back to Wall Street, he had a traumatic brain injury. He was there for a very long time, very sad, became very suicidal, and he, thank God did not, but attempted. He didn't succeed. And what ended up happening after that is he then went on to heal from that journey, and he went on to create what's called a battle buddy. He's now making an impact and sharing his message so that no one thinks about suicide alone, that they have someone to talk to. And he's changed thousands of lives and stopped thousands of suicides. And now here's a man who did not know how to build a rapport. He has his sunglasses on, and he's looking off to the side. He's never looking in the camera. And he's telling me this story, and I can tell he's getting choked up. Why? Because I can hear it, I can see it, his body language is showing it to me. And he's telling me about the impact he's made on the Battle Buddy system that he's created, this program. And I said, how did that make you feel? And you would have thought I had slammed on my brakes in the car. He whipped his head to the camera, took down his sunglasses, and he said, feel? What? Feel? Nobody's asked me that question. I've been on hundreds of podcasts, and nobody has ever asked me, how did that make me feel? Think about that impact that I just had on him. Think about the impact that had on the audience. His battle buddies that he's sharing this episode with. It's about how to make that feel. Your voice is your greatest asset out of the three of those. And we have what I like to call three voices. We have an inner voice that tells you what to do, how to do it, or holds you back and tells you with fear, don't do it. We have a business voice. How are you utilizing your voice for your business? What is your branding? What is your presence? What is your podcast? Is your legacy voice, like we talked about a little bit ago. And I have so much more to tell you, and I'm running out of time. And I want to leave you with this. So it is your inner voice, your business voice, your legacy voice. And I just want to think about that when you leave a legacy, what you're really doing is leaving a place. When you leave people, they are going to remember how you made them feel. Every episode, do you want to leave them feeling empowered or sad, right? You get that choice. This is your episode. So if you just want to take a moment, have you put your hand on your heart. Close your eyes, take in a deep breath. I just want to say to you that your voice is your legacy. Your podcast is your legacy. Every time you share your wisdom, not just your wisdom with your guest, but your guest shares their wisdom, it ignites a tiny spark of hope, love, connection, and community so that it ignites others. And then it spreads like wildfire. So take a deep breath in, and I just want you to say, your voice is your biggest asset. So, now, who's fired up, ready to hit record, and thrive in 25? So I have a special gift for you, so if you want to, click on that, feel free, connect with me. We're gonna have question and answers. If it goes longer, I'm here the rest of the weekend, and we have a meetup at 4, so I'd love to hear. Yes.
Yeah, and if the next speaker is here, we can get your computer switched out here, but in the meantime,
Justin Pierre from LYI Media. Thank you for your powerful presentation. What advice would you give for live streamers who do interviews live?
Yeah. Do you set that tone before you hit record?
Yes, I try to.
Okay. So is there a question about that something might go wrong, or?
So how do you alleviate the nervousness of the guest who's coming on about going live? Like in a place like LinkedIn.
Yeah. So how long do you allow yourself?
30 minutes.
Okay, how long do you allow yourself for that building report, setting the tone?
15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes while they're getting their tech set up.
And so the question is how are you building that rapport? How are you finding that common ground that you know that you're going to talk about? How are you building them up, speaking life into them to calm them down? Your experience, they may be not. So how are you using that time to have a conversation around nerves, energy, excitement? Because excitement and nervousness shows up the same way in our body. It's how we decide to choose what to call it, is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we can talk more about this later. Yeah, for sure.
I thank you for this. I learned so much. Can you give another example of when you said not to be rude when you interrupt? So I love what you were talking about, but you sort of said, I'd love to have you on the show. Well, what if you don't want to have them on the show? What would be another example?
Well, I love that question because you said, I love what you're saying, but never say but. I love what you're saying, and we have a time limit, and I just want to stay on track. And you are sharing so much, and I know you have so much more to share, so we can come back to this if there's more time at the end. Yeah, great question, thank you. Yes.
I have another podcast that we do live interviews with celebrities, and we're doing junkets. You have 5 minutes, and we get a lot of celebrities that won't shut up because they're bad interviewers. I know it sounds funny, and they don't understand that we're trying to get through at least 3 questions in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Along that same line, how do you, because it's a very delicate thing because you want them back and whatever else, but at the same time, they're good stories. I don't know what the question is, but in terms of what she said, if you can kind of even elaborate more.
That's probably a longer conversation we're going to have outside of here, because I have more questions to ask about that. Yes.
I'm sorry, I came in a little late, so you may have covered this, but I was curious. I do interviews with equestrian riders, and I find the first few minutes, which is I'm sure perfectly normal, and sort of have to warm up. But I wondered, is there a way to get to where you can go deep faster?
Are they on the horse when you're interviewing them? Okay, just check. I just need to know that. Again, I think we're running out of time, and that's a really great question. But going deep, when you want to hit those hard-hitting questions, it's really about building that rapport first. You can do things like match each other's breathing, right? Pick up a drink at the same time. That's building rapport super quickly. Complimenting them. That's builds rapport super quickly. Yeah.
all right, let's give Shay Sparks a round of applause.
Tomorrow, and like I said, I'll be here in the hallway, and we're having a meetup or out there. So yes, let's talk.
So thank you so much, Shay. Yeah, just feel free to, if you guys want to answer some more questions, she'll step out.